Welcome to a global history of architecture and urbanism. We're going to explore the design of architecture, public spaces, landscapes, and cities in all parts of the globe, pausing at times to notice the great differences and similarities that are shared between different cultures and different time periods. We're going to start with the Renaissance and move through the 19th century, which means we're going to go right up into the Industrial Age. And because of that, I'm going to start with an important question. Is architecture a science or an art? Since the dawn of human history, people have asked this question in different ways, and it's one that doesn't really have an answer. Architecture is both a science and an art, isn't it? Well, the ancient Roman engineer and architect Vitruvius talked about the distinction between the practical side, the science, and the theoretical side, the art, of making architecture in a book he wrote around 30 BCE. He wrote that a good marriage of science and art in the design of architecture, or that of a city, must have the following qualities. Firmitas. A building should be solid and stable, right? Utilitas. It should be useful, have a purpose. Venustas. Definitely, it should be a delight to look at. It should be beautiful. This triad came from the foundation for the design of architecture of the Western world. This partnership between art and science provides a starting point from which many great ideas in architecture can be traced. The humanist scholars, artists, and architects of the Renaissance rediscovered classical Greek and Roman writings and aspired to design architecture in cities that exemplified the mathematical perfection aspired to in the classical world. Vitruvian concepts had their parallels in other parts of the early modern world. In fact, the celebrated 15th century drawing, The Vitruvian Man, by Leonardo da Vinci, which describes how to use proportion in design, may actually have had its roots in India. Regarding firmitas, the first one, the solidity or stability of structural design. How did design ideas progress from the 16th century Chinese pagoda, essentially a 5-story timber frame tower, all the way to the 100-story tall Eiffel Tower of 19th century Paris, engineered in iron? Progress in methods of construction and material technology are just one path to explore. When it comes to utilitas, the utility of a building can be thought of as a functional organization of the spaces in a building that respond to a building's purpose. We're going to explore the invention of one-point perspective by the first architect of the Renaissance, Brunelleschi, and its impact on the development of the grid plan in architecture and in cities, and learn how this slowly evolves into a more fluid, interlocking spaces that we see in the Baroque era. Venustas, the beauty of architecture, was most often equated with a building's ornament. An ornament was chosen according to a desired style. Is it something that should be added to the surface of a structure, like the Renaissance classical orders, or an 18th century Pompeian fresco, or maybe a neo-Gothic fan vaulting in the Rococo style? Or instead, should ornament be a fundamental component of architecture itself, such as with the timber churches in Russia or with the designs of Italian Baroque architects such as Bernini and Borromini, who created designs that integrated architecture, sculpture, and painting into one whole, where one component could not be removed without dismantling the entire design itself? Well, beauty is indeed in the eye of the beholder, and in the 19th century, if you loved past historical styles, you could choose among many of them, perhaps even combining them as Charles Garnier did when he created his Beaux-Arts masterpiece, the Paris Opera. Just a few years later, this tall tower appeared, casting a long and dark shadow over the rooftops of Paris. The commoners loved it. The architects hated it. But it changed how people of the world saw Venustas, the beauty of architecture, forever. Proponents of structural rationalism, such as Viollet-le-Duc, would argue that the form of architecture and its structural design should be united as one, as we see here. The science of architecture, he said, should not be hidden behind its artful forms, but rather should be expressed in an honest and truthful manner. But was the Eiffel Tower a science experiment, or was it art? There are absolutely no prerequisites for this course, meaning that any student at UTSA can sign up. I'm hoping you might come join us this summer as we explore the history of architecture for the very first time as an official internet course. I look forward to seeing you in July.